Hi, everybody. Surprises me every week. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. I want to welcome you all. We've got a really, it's kind of a tough topic tonight, but it's an important one. So I'm really glad that you're here. I need to do some reminders. I need to ask you to please like the Leather Elves on Facebook. That way you'll get notification when we go live. You can also follow us on Instagram and subscribe to the Leather Elves YouTube channel. So there are a lot of different ways to check out the Leather Elves. It also will keep you up to date on things that are going on, like sales and with the Leather Elves, and any events that are going on. I wanted to explain a little bit before we get started about why we're doing this. And so there's been a lot of recent events that have been rather sad and difficult. And I really felt that the timing was right to have this discussion. And it's not a condemnation of any of the past events. I would prefer if we can kind of keep the comments away from things that have happened and our opinions of them, just because this is, a way to look towards the future. It's really not about, what happened and why did it happen and all that. We're going to talk about how we can try to stop unfortunate situations from occurring. So, I am really excited, and I would like to introduce to all of you my guest. So, this is Patty Christie. Hey, Patty, how are you?
I'm good. Good.
Good. So, I'm going to read Patty's bio because it's pretty impressive. Patty, Patty has been involved in veterinary medicine for over 44 years. She became a certified veterinary technician in 1987 in Minnesota and has enjoyed a variety of career positions within the veterinary field, including lead veterinary technician, office manager, and practice manager. Her first parrot, a blue-fronted Amazon named Higgins, came into her life in 1996 from the veterinary hospital where she worked. Higgins had significant medical and behavioral issues, and Patty sought information and education to help rehabilitate this bird. This experience was incredibly rewarding and humbling to see the transformation. A passion for educating companion bird caregivers was ignited and has not dimmed since. In 1999, Patty reopened Avian Suites, a state of the art bird boarding facility in Minneapolis. This boarding facility has been a model for aviculturists and veterinary professionals to provide a safe, biosecure environment. I can tell you whenever anyone asks me, well, I don't know, I want to open a boarding place. What should it look like? I tell them it should look like Avian Suites. In 2007, Patty moved to Colorado to work with a parrot welfare organization as director of adoptions, education, and avian welfare. In 2010, an opportunity presented itself once again to work in the veterinary medicine, and she accepted a position as practice manager at an avian exotic veterinary hospital in Golden, Colorado, until she needed to move back to Minnesota to be closer to family. She currently manages two busy veterinary hospitals in the Twin Cities area. Patty has many years of experience planning and facilitating conferences and providing avian educational forums for veterinary professionals and pet owners. She has been a guest speaker at veterinary technician, and animal care professional conferences locally and nationally on a variety of avian health and care topics. Patty's flock includes 4 African gray parrots, a double yellow-headed Amazon, and a sassy male eclectus. Is there any other kind of male eclectus? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
They all came from previous homes. She also lives with 3 cats and 1 very tolerant husband. So we're pretty lucky to have Patty with us. If you think about all she's doing, I really want to thank you for taking some time to talk to us about this really important topic.
Well, it is an important topic, and it's one I'm very passionate about. So happy to be here.
Excellent. So the first question that comes to mind is, people are like, oh, well, I don't need to plan ahead. My kids will take my birds. Have you heard? I'm sure you've heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, from my own experience, my daughter didn't have any siblings, so the birds she had the sibling rivalry with our birds. And she said for many years, Mom, when you die, I'm just going to cook those birds. So that in itself was a motivation. She obviously wasn't, going to do that, but that was a motivation to make sure that I did have something in place, because clearly she was not interested in taking them, nor are any of my other family members. Although I do have a niece who is who I've been kind of training up a little bit. But yeah, so it's, think about it. It's, you got to have something in place because it just can't happen itself.
No, and I think, we've all experienced, unfortunately, at one time or another, losing someone unexpectedly, or, someone is suddenly unable to care for their pets or
Mhm,
themselves. And what happens then? We all want to think that we're going to live forever, but we're not. And
mhm,
we also think that everyone loves our birds and our pets the way we do.
mhm,
I mean, they'll come over and they like your birds and it's really cool. And oh, you're that cool person that has those birds, but it's not the same thing. And I think that's a really hard realization to come to.
mhm,
Um, this is the Patty. You've given a talk on this. We have some of the slides here, um, and I think you know. I think the last line is really important. We have the ability to make sure they're cared for in the manner they've become accustomed to. So
mhm.
explain that to me just a little bit.
So, I think we each have our own standard of care for our birds. And I think it's really important that we keep track of how we take care of our birds. Not everybody takes care of their birds the same way that we would want them to. So
Mhm.
keeping track of any like your feeding schedule, your what toys they like, what pellets they like, what how they like to take their showers, what kinds of things that they like to do, for exercise. Keeping all those notes are really important, so that if somebody did have to come in and be the caregiver, whether it was with you transitioning to them or if it was kind of a sudden, gotta do this, that it would be kind of seamless, which would definitely reduce the stress, I think, on the birds too. That consistency as much as possible is really important.
And I think too, we need to consider our family members. So, we've got these pets and, birds in particular, because pretty much everyone has some experience with dogs and cats. I
Mhm,
mean, most people have had a dog or a cat in their life at some point in time.
mhm,
It's not the same with birds. And I think we, if something were to happen to us, we need to be aware that not only is that, our family member is having to worry about our birds, but about us too. And
mhm,
so if you've got this plan, I mean, you love your family and you want to take some of that off them, so it's not, they can take care of you and they don't have to worry about
mhm.
taking care of the bird. That's not their thing.
Well, we
So
had a situation at Avian Suites a number of years ago where this gal uh, had gone on a motorcycle trip. She was 30 years old. She was doing a motorcycle trip. She was killed in an accident, unfortunately, on the trip. And her family called us, is the bird with you? It didn't happen to be at that time. We didn't know where the bird was. The family didn't know where the bird was, didn't know what she wanted done with the bird, nothing. And it's like 30 years old, you just don't, you got a plan.
and that's, it was interesting. I saw a post today on Facebook, and somebody said it was a younger person, and she said, "I'm tired of everybody telling me this has to go in my will and that has to go in my will." And I thought, this is exactly what Patty and I are going to talk about tonight. Is
Mhm,
it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 120. You've got to have something in place.
mhm.
And we're talking pretty seriously about death or incapacity. But what happens when so anybody that's tried to fly recently? So you go into the airport and there's the big board that says delay, 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 cancel, 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 cancel. So you go on vacation and I'm going to be back on Monday. Okay. Oh, well, maybe I can't get back till Wednesday or Thursday. What's the plan?
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be the forever plan, but there have to be
Right.
plans in place. Um, I know you talk about, yeah, so there are two types of planning. Um, Patty, maybe you can explain to people who are listening short term versus long term.
So short-term care would be, even just your basic boarding situation, or if you have a pet sitter coming into your home, that is, usually short-term. Um, or like you're having surgery and the bird needs to be out of the home for 6 weeks or so. Or you're in, going into a rehab facility and, post illness and need some temporary care. That's kind of what the short-term care um, is versus
Okay.
long term. You're probably not going to be getting your pet back kind of
Right.
care.
I see Bonnie made a comment here that this literally just happened to her. She went on a trip, got COVID, had to quarantine.
Mhm.
She said, thank God a friend who had Gabriel, her parrot, could take care of him longer. So, it does
Mhm.
have just making sure that the that somebody and I know Avian Suites is great about updates and things like that, but also having someone besides just you knowing what that short-term plan is. The
Yep.
communication piece is so important.
Mhm.
Um, can you talk a little bit about that?
Uh, a little bit. I'm sorry, I missed part of that.
The communication piece, how
Oh,
important
yeah.
that is, that when
Mhm.
you make sure it's not just you who knows the plan.
Right, right, exactly. You know, everything needs to be in writing. If it's not in writing, it's not a plan. So, even for I have a folder for each of my birds that has their medical records, and they've got, all the little idiosyncrasies about them, what they like, all that kind of stuff. And having that, you let at least a couple of people know where that information is, should somebody need to get a hold of it in an unexpected situation. And that is, even when you have if you take them to a boarding facility, I know, Avian Suites, they do keep a lot of records, and they always, have a backup person in town that they can reach in case you can't be reached. So it's not just walking out and letting one person know. You do have to communicate with your family, let them know that your bird's going to be taken care of by, XYZ, so that if something were to happen, they would at least know who they needed to get a hold of.
And yeah, Eva says that, even the best laid plans can and do
Mhm.
go awry. Just happened to her recently. So backup plans are not only a good idea, but essential. It's so
Yeah.
true, Eva. Um, so I want to talk about something that you have discussed, fostering independence.
Mhm.
So this is not having the clingy kid, is the way I like to look at it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so tell us about fostering independence and why you think it's important.
Well, because I mean, people over the years, and they there's been the, oh, he only loves me, um, and they that's just not healthy. Um, Birds are going to have to go into different situations for a variety of reasons. Even
Mhm.
if it's just short term, or on vacation. I just think it's so important, starting from day one, that you get people around them and that they get used to having other people around them. One, it sets them up for success. When I was at the parrot welfare organization that I worked at in Colorado, I can't tell you how many of these birds came in and they had never been away from their home. They had never been away from their primary caregiver. Primary caregiver was, either had passed away or was no longer able to care for them. and they come into this situation with other birds and other people, and it was incredibly stressful. I mean, you just see them like, oh my gosh, what has happened to me? And that was one of the things that I just started thinking, we've got to find ways that we can get our birds to be comfortable with other people. But along with that, I say, make sure that when you have those opportunities, that it's people that are comfortable with birds.
Mhm.
You don't want to just say, hey, I just need somebody to come and play with my bird, so that it gets, used to people. They need to understand body language. They need to understand how to interact with birds and that. But it makes them, I just took a bird in that had been with his owner for 26 years. I've known him for many years as well, but I mean, it was just a seamless transition to come to my house.
Mhm.
It was a little bit of a shock because came from a fairly quiet house, and I've got kind of boisterous birds, but he never stopped eating. He just kind of, he never, still playing with his toys, ripping things up, talking to the other birds. I mean, it was like, okay, the previous owner did a great job because
Mhm.
he got a lot of opportunities for socialization, and coming into a new home, it was really pretty seamless. So,
And I think you're absolutely right about making sure the people are comfortable as well. You don't want to be thrusting your bird at people that are like, oh, no, 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 because
yeah.
I mean, there are certain times when I look at a bird and I observe body language, and I know that I don't want to hold that bird right now. And it's oh, well, you're an expert here. Can you hold my bird? No, no, I can't. I like my fingers. I like them the way they are.
Mhm.
The face is getting older, but I like it. So no, I don't. Um, but I think, it's really about people being comfortable and the bird being comfortable too. So it's
Mhm.
not, I'm going to give you to 17 different people all in one day and you're going to be okay with it. And you've never done it before. I mean,
Right.
there's, there are nuances to doing it. And I think it's a form of training. People are like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, he's great. He's gonna do this." And I think we have a lot of faith in our birds.
Mhm.
They're great, but it's the same as little kids. They behave at school and then they come home and it's a nightmare. No, that my
Yep.
you it's got to be a gradual thing. It's not,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I have to, go in the hospital in 3 days and I got to take care of this right now.
Mhm.
That's probably not going to be successful. Um, if it's an emergency, hopefully you've done some build up to that. And I think too, the second line here, the one person bird, it's okay, it's human nature to want something to love you and to be like, I am his favorite thing, but you really have to consider, first of all, that they will probably outlive us,
Mhm.
and that, you're not going to be that bird's only person, probably. We all, again, Eva, best laid plans, it doesn't always happen. So yeah, I think this is a really, really important thing to think about. Having those birds that don't have to be with you all the time. I know Frank is on here, and Frank is the cockatoo guy. Um, but a lot of cockatoos are turned into Velcro birds. And
Yep.
when you've got that Velcro bird and now you've got an emergency, um, you got Bonnie's right. You got to have someone take care of your bird when you go to birdie conference. True, Um, but yeah, I think it's important to really be aware of how you're kind of shaping your bird so that
Well,
everybody succeeds.
and how many birds are given up because they only like one member of the household, and also you've got all the issues with the reproductive behaviors and stuff like that when you've got the only can be with one person. So not just for their socialization, but for their long-term success in the home that they're in, is one of the key reasons too why you want to make sure that they are independent and that you're
Yeah,
not.
that's a really good point. Um, so, all right. So we've talked about health issues. We've talked about life changes. Um, Natural disasters are another thing I think that, we need to talk about. Um, when you're doing planning, Patty, if you're talking to someone about, how they should be doing planning, do you include things like natural disasters so that they've got something in place for that as well?
Yep. Yeah. And well, especially like when I was living out in Colorado, where we were having such an issue with the fires and that, I had
Mhm.
a box, and similar to your emergency kit, that I know that you guys have put together. But there was, I always kept a jug of water in there, dishes. I have a vacuum sealer, so I vacuum sealed several packets of food,
Okay.
and the dry food, and then towels and things like that, so that if we had to evacuate, all I had to do is pick up my box of all the stuff. I had at least 4 or 5 days of stuff in there ready to go, throw the birds in their carriers and head out.
Yeah.
um, Fortunately, we didn't have to evacuate. We came really close, but didn't have to. Here in Minnesota, we have issues with tornadoes, and that's probably the biggest natural disaster. If the home was destroyed and you had to be out, I mean, we've gone under the stairs with our, all these carriers, and a little bit of room for the humans, but,
Let's talk
but
priorities here. Come on.
yeah, having just having that box ready to go, and so it reduces the stress on you as well, because it's like, okay, that's one
Mhm.
less thing I have to worry about. But it's just and you do drills, especially if you're in an area where the chances of needing to evacuate are. And if you got a few birds, if you have one bird, it's not quite as hard to get things together quickly. But when you've got more than one, you know, I encourage people to do drills. And the other thing that is really important, and I think that you probably have got this in your emergency kit information, but all your veterinary information needs to be there and handy, and at the ready, because sometimes that's where you end up having to bring your bird, if you have a disaster.
Yeah,
You know,
so Nick just put this up. This is the paperwork that we were including in the emergency essentials kit. The QR code will get you to that. And it is things like the veterinary information and schedules. If your bird, some people have their birds on a very specific schedule. It's emergency contacts, veterinary and I put a signature in here as well. And what we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but so that you're not just assuming, because again, we love our birds and we think that everybody else loves them too. And oh, Aunt Susie will take the bird. Well, you know what? Aunt Susie really doesn't want the bird. So we need to get Aunt Susie to sign something that says she's going to take the bird. So she's at least aware that somebody's going to be trying to give her that bird at some point in time, because it's really not a pleasant thing, unless, of course, someone wants to give you like a hyacinth or something. But it's really not a pleasant thing to just have someone drop a bird on your doorstep. So, and it's, things like food, diet, toys, quirks, because whether we like to admit it or not, there are certain little things that we really, it's specific to our bird alone. And if I took in someone else's bird, I would want to know those kind of things. Frank says Lips gives out cards where you list 2 people who should be contacted if anything happens to you. Long Island Parrot Society. That's great. You have tornadoes on our left hand and hurricanes on your right. Yeah, you got to be prepared. And there's some things here that are all these things that are important. Cleaning. What do they eat? Do they is there something that they will not eat? Is there the other thing that is medication? And you can list the medication, but how is it given? I think that's something we need to think about too, that, maybe this bird will just take it and it's not a problem. Maybe other birds, you gotta trick them into taking it from the syringe. How does it work at your house? That's kind of what I like to think of it as. Um, Terry, I appreciate that. We don't have the kits on the site anymore, but I'm happy to list what's on there. I can, get that out there for you guys.
The form is set up as a free download at that QR code. It's a tiny URL/avian resource record. Excuse me, avian record.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, so um, we've talked a little bit about short term versus long term. And I think people get a little scared, Patty, when they're making these plans because I think they're afraid that if I make a plan, it's forever. It means my bird's going to be rehomed and I'm not going to get it back. Have you had to deal with scenarios like that where people are reluctant to talk about this or reluctant um, to kind of plan because they're afraid it's a forever thing?
Well, I think that that's kind of our society is just afraid to talk about plans for ourselves,
Mhm.
as well as for our pets. And that's understandable. It's not a pleasant topic,
Yeah.
but it is. I think it's our responsibility, whether we are a pet parent or a person parent or whatever, to not leave it up to guessing. We need to make sure that our wishes and how we want our pets to be cared for is is what happens. In the case of death, obviously we won't know, but still, I mean, it gives our birds the best chance to have the kind of life that we envision for them if we
Mhm.
are not in a position to take care of them. And so, yeah, I think initially it is hard for people to talk about. But I think once they get into it and understanding or hearing some of the stories of things that have gone wrong, that where people have not, where the birds have ended up, where people wouldn't want them to be. I think that kind of motivates people to maybe think twice about, hey, you know what? It doesn't mean that I'm going to die tomorrow because I put stuff in writing. It just means I'm being a responsible pet caregiver. So,
And I think what also goes hand in hand with that, I think, is asking for help.
mhm.
So, not talking about long term or, you know, I think sometimes people find themselves in situations and they're ashamed or embarrassed and they don't want to ask for help.
Right.
And, whether it be an individual owner, someone who's providing rescue services or rehoming services, a sanctuary, I think, like I said in the beginning, we've all heard the horror stories. We've heard them, and how do we encourage people to ask for help? Excuse me.
Um, well, I think that just continuing to keep the topic out there. I think that, what you're doing here with the podcast is really an excellent forum to get people thinking about it. Um, I encourage people to, I think that most people know that the rescue groups, the sanctuaries, many of them are at or past capacity. So I think that a lot of people that were considering, well, I'll just, have my bird go to XYZ, a rescue sanctuary. That may or may not be an option anymore, just because the demand is so high and the space is not necessarily able to meet that demand. I saw that firsthand. So you need to start thinking about who else, what other options do I have? And the other piece is, you can get your bird into a situation where it is maybe just a long-term foster,
Mhm.
where you can make arrangements for the bird to be cared for a specific period of time. I know that there's been some people that have experienced homelessness that, it's temporary. And so they just need somebody for a short period of time to take care of their bird. Call it a long-term foster. Maybe it's for a year or two. But again, when you enter into those situations, you need to make sure that you've got everything in writing as far as what the expectations are. I will provide, what financial care I can during this time. And at the end of this time, it's still my bird and I get it back. Um, so
I
you
think,
asked about
oh, I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, I know Carrie Ellen is on, and Carrie Ellen is from Bird Gardens of Naples. And I know Carrie Ellen does that. I've called her before and said, hey, this person contacted me, is, having a real rough patch. And what are we going to do? And Carrie Ellen's response was, where is this person? And I told her, and she said, I'll go get the bird. And I said, well, no, 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 no. He doesn't want to give it up forever. And she said, no, it's okay.
Mhm.
And she went and got this bird, helped this person through. I think we need to remember that people who are doing rescue, who are doing rehoming, who are doing sanctuary, um, you know, they start out and their hearts are in it, and they're not. I don't think a lot of them are going to say to you, you're stupid. How did you get in that situation? And I think that's the fear, is that people just they don't want to put that out there. They don't, if so and so knows I'm having a hard time, they're going to take my bird away from me. So I think it's more about having that dialogue and being
Mhm.
willing to say, look, I can't do it right now. I think I'm gonna, things are gonna get better down the road. Can you just help me out for a little bit? And I
Mhm.
really think that people who are providing these services, you have that conversation, they're probably willing to talk to them about it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
yeah.
saw that at the organization I was at in Colorado. I mean, we had an active adoption program, but we also had long-term foster, and then we had
Mhm,
sanctuary. Where the birds were not going to leave the sanctuary. They were there for the duration of their natural lives. But we had a number of long-term foster situations for a variety of reasons, and you know they got they ended up getting reunited in most cases with their owners after a period of time. Sometimes, I mean, even like we had one who was a college student, and while he was going to college, he knew he didn't have the ability to provide the kind of care he wanted for his bird during that
mhm.
time. And so when he graduated from college, bird went back to him, so probably
And,
had a little bit.
Eva says here, it's hard to think that we need to make the decision to give up the loves of our lives forever. And it
Mhm.
is. It definitely
Yeah.
is. And so if you can have that conversation, open that dialogue and ask for a little bit of help, and it may turn into it is forever. But
Mhm.
in when you're, so from a psychology point of view, when you're in crisis, making decisions right then and there about what's going to happen to the things that you love, the creatures that you love, is probably not. Um, yeah, Carrie Ellen says she wants to keep the birds in homes, but foster is important. And so
Mhm.
psychologically, you're dealing with some situation, some crisis, whether it be medical or, just personal, financial, whatever that may be. To make that decision right then is I mean, that's terrifying,
Mhm.
it's the last thing you wanna talk about. And Bonnie
Mhm.
brought up a good point too when you were talking, Patty. She said, "And keep your information updated periodically."
Yep.
Unfortunately, she had a U2, that she just lost, and where he passed at age 35, and she had him in her will. And so just make sure you're updating that kind of stuff. And I'm sorry, Ray, for your loss. But we really need to be. it's that you create a plan, keep it current, and
Yep.
and if something changes, maybe your situation changes and it's not what you want any longer. Make sure that you're updating that plan.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so, and you mentioned too, it's got to be in writing. You know, I I think we get overconfident. Oh, I talked to Patty about that, and Patty said she'd take the
Mhm.
birds. She's like, "Oh,
Yep.
she loves my birds. She'll take them." Talk to us about I mean, why it has to be in writing, please.
Well, because I think sometimes the person that you thought would take your bird may have thought it was just a polite conversation, if that makes sense. It's oh yeah, sure, I'll take them. I mean, I can't tell you, and I know Karen's on here too, and she can tell you how many people think, I know you love my bird, so when I need it to go somewhere, the avian suites will take it. And it's like, there's only so many that we can take.
Mhm.
Um, so the other piece was I found interesting when I was out in Colorado is we would have birds that people would contact us, like the representative of the family. Oh, they left the bird to this organization in their will, and so I just need to know how to bring it out there. So not only do you need to have your stuff in writing, but you also need to have the permission of the person or organization that you are planning to have take care of your bird. Let them know,
Mhm.
so that there's not that surprise. That happened a number of times when I was out there, and it was like, uh, we don't really have room. so, um, yeah, so that
Yeah.
was, they're going out to the
Karen
curb,
came
Karen.
in. For any of you that don't know Karen, Karen would have them, roosting on her bedpost before she put anybody on the
Yeah.
curb. So the we've got some important points here on this slide, Patty, that you've got examine the business plan.
Yeah.
Explain that to us.
So, I think many of these organizations, rescues, sanctuaries, rehoming groups, the people that start them are wonderful, have wonderful hearts. They do it for all the right reasons. But
Mhm.
the bottom line is it still is a business, and it needs to be run as a business, meaning that there needs to be income to cover your expenses. And I think that that's where I've seen groups get into trouble, in that they their hearts are so big that they want to help everybody, but they don't have a plan of succession once they are not able to keep up with the care needs or the financial needs. So
Mhm.
um again, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with treating it like a business, so that you can
Yeah.
keep doing what you want to do. And if they don't have a business plan, if they don't have a good board of directors that's holding people accountable, and if they don't have a plan of succession when that current primary president of the organization, or board of directors or whatever, they're not there anymore or available, what happens if it's all dependent on one person doing everything, financing everything? um, then the organization just kind of crumbles, and then all the other groups are left to kind of pick up the pieces. We saw.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Nick, can we go back to the slide on, because I think another important point that we need to discuss is rescue versus sanctuary.
Mhm.
Um, we've been kind of tossing around those terms, and they're very distinct entities that I think people need to know the difference, because
Mhm.
the terms do get bandied around. So, Patty, do you want to explain this for people?
So, a rescue or avian welfare organization, more often than not, has an active adoption process. They're there to try to rehome and get help birds be successful in new homes for whatever reason they were given up. That they can be successful in another home. And some of these groups don't. They may not have a central facility. They rely on foster homes, and so that's one of the other differentiating factors. And that in their active adoption process, they are actually educating, screening potential adopters, helping set them up for success. Sanctuary, basically, you're asking the organization to take care of the birds for their natural lifetime. They don't adopt out. They only take the birds in, and so at some point they're going to reach their capacity. And sanctuaries would have a facility that they would keep the birds at, and this facility would be the where the bird would end up staying. So that's kind of the difference between the two. But I think that it's important to decide what it is that you want your birds, where you want them to be. I had a situation with a client who they had become ill. They were older. They had become ill, weren't able to take care of their birds anymore. So they started talking to a place in Canada because they wanted their birds to be in a sanctuary and live with other birds and be, have this wonderful free life and all that kind of stuff. And I said to them, I said, but they've been, really pets and part of your life and part of the household and part of the family. And they like the human bond that they have, and in a sanctuary they wouldn't have that. And then the sanctuary is absolutely appropriate for some birds, but in this case it wasn't. And I think that they sort of had this romantic idea about my bird will have all this space to fly, and that they don't fly now. I mean, they so fortunately I was able to do a little education, and they changed their mind, and actually the birds live with me now, but that wasn't the point.
I think it's true. We do envision this beautiful life for our birds after us, and it's not always about that freedom. It's not about that, living in the grand giant aviary with a flock of other birds. And if this is a bird that's lived with you one on one, especially a bird that's lived with you one on one, you really need, yeah, it's the butterflies and rainbows kind of, idea there. But if you've got the bird that's been one on one for years and years, and suddenly they're going to be with other birds, and that may
and
not
not having
work.
that human interaction, that
Absolutely.
so.
And I think, you need to open again a dialogue with, if you decide you want them to go to a, rescue or welfare organization, and you want, they're going to be rehomed at some point, then you've got to have that conversation, not just one phone call, not just I looked them up on Google and this is what it says, because we all know, I mean, this is going to sound hard. Pet birds belong in a home, not a sanctuary. Carrie Ellen's pretty savvy about all of this. She's lived a lot of these scenarios. I'm glad she's on tonight. But, let's be honest. You can look up a place and you can make it, you've got somebody like Nick that works with you. You can make it look like paradise. And it may not necessarily. If you can physically go and if you can physically go and talk to the people, I think it's so important. And if it's a sanctuary, what does that mean? What are you talking about? Are you talking about, flying birds in a big aviary and there isn't that human interaction? Are you talking about, just a place for them to be for the rest of their natural lives. More than one conversation, a visit. The other question
Yes.
that comes up is financial.
Mhm.
We need to talk about that too, I think. That sometimes sanctuaries ask for an endowment. And
Mhm.
is that something that you're prepared to do? Bonnie says she has a friend who's terrified and has her birds in her will. She's so upset because she sees what's happened to so many birds that get adopted and rehomed. Don't know how to even try to provide a sense of comfort. Bonnie, I think it's really about having the conversation.
Mhm.
Um, and if she can make things very specific, Patty, you've been talking about putting it in writing, making sure you have all that documented. Um, if she, exactly what she wants,
Mhm.
and be very clear with people. I don't think it's upsetting. This conversation is upsetting for people. Patty, what would you suggest that Bonnie might say to her friend?
Well, I think that again, starting the conversation sort of takes a little bit of the angst out of it by talking about it. But also, if she's got an organization or somebody that she knows that would be willing to help with this, meet with them. I mean, if you're looking at an organization, go and sit down with them. I wholeheartedly agree with what Robin said as far as how they can make make a place look like, oh my gosh, I want to give up my bird now because it looks like it would have such a great life there. And
I
then you
want to
go,
live there.
yeah, and then you go visit, and it's completely different than, and you walk away going, there's no way I would put my bird there. That's not what what would be right for my bird. So it is really important to go visit, and maybe in some of those going to visit um, would also help them see what other what is how these other birds have transitioned into homes, and hear some of the stories, or even meet some of the people that adopted from the organization, and find out about how they set them up for success, what kinds of support they get. So again, just talking and looking and listening and going to visit is going to be.
And I think too that there's some red flags that pop up.
Mhm.
If you want to go somewhere and they tell you, oh, no, 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 you can't come here. I'm not so sure.
Right.
If, they're not willing to talk to you about, they don't have to give you tell you every penny that they have, or, but what does the budget look like? Is there a financial plan? Are they financially solid?
Hmm.
Or is it because I can open a rescue or a sanctuary and not have the money to keep it going. I don't have those financial resources that are listed here, to really keep it going, as long as it's going to need to.
Hmm.
And is it my first rodeo? Maybe I had a parakeet and I love birds because I have this parakeet, and now I'm going to open a sanctuary.
Hmm.
Okay, that's not to say I can't do a good job, but let's talk about, what's your experience look like?
Hmm.
Is it, and if you can't get the answers to these questions, those should be red flags for you.
Right.
You know,
Well, in GuideStar, I don't know if you're familiar with GuideStar, but you can go on GuideStar, and any 501c3, they have to turn in what's called a 990 every year that lists all their assets and how they spent their money, and where their money came from, what income they got. And I can give you a pretty good idea, too. One of the key things that I look at when I look at the Guide Star for different animal welfare organizations is how much they spend on veterinary care in a year.
Mhm.
That can be very telling. I mean, there are some there's a few, but they're huge that have their own veterinarians on staff. So, but in general, I remember looking at one organization that looked really, really good on, on the website, and started looking at it. And I think that they had spent a total of, it was less than $200 listed for their veterinary care for the year. And this is a place that had, well over 100 birds. And I just went, something's not right. And that would be definitely, if I would have gone any further, that would be one of those places that I would definitely go and sit down and go visit and talk to the people that were in charge. So
Yeah. I mean, and I think we do need to be realistic that, if you say, I give Pookie a half a walnut every day at 2 o'clock, and
right.
Pookie needs to get that walnut, if the person kind of looks at you and does the head tilt, that's okay. Because,
Yeah.
there's 100 Pookies in this facility, right? And he'll get his walnut, but it might not be at 2 o'clock. So you've got to be slightly flexible. That doesn't mean, give on things that are very important to you, but some of the little things, as long as you inform them what's going on in your situation and it can be adapted to fit into that facility, then I think that's what yeah. Janice says, who can walk out of a vet clinic bill as cheap as 200? Right, exactly. I'd like the name of that veterinarian, please. Or maybe not. I don't. Yeah. So I think it's really, there are a lot of questions that need to be asked, and there are plans that need to be made. But what about, so legally, Patty, if someone came to you and said, what do I need to do legally, what would your advice be to them for that?
Well, first of all, depending on what state they're in, there are a number of states now that do allow pet trusts. Minnesota, just in 2016, we finally got the ability to do that, and Minnesota is usually one of the last ones to get to do stuff. So chances are pretty good that a lot of them are allowing these pet trusts. Pet trust actually, what it does is you name a trustee basically to manage the funds, and then you have a caregiver that cares for the bird. And that the thing that's really nice about that is the person who's the caregiver is not the person managing the money, so that you've got some oversight and accountability there. I personally like that. And then but again, I would talk to an estate planning attorney, and do it in concert with your own estate planning, because that's important as well. But find out if you can do a pet trust. If you can't do a pet trust, you can name a beneficiary to be the administrator of care. There's some, you can get, forms online to name a beneficiary. One thing that can be helpful if you don't have the ability to have a pet trust in the state you're in is getting a term life insurance policy that would cover the financial requirements that you would want to have for your bird. And then the person who would be getting the bird, or the organization that would be getting the bird, would be named as the beneficiary in that. And then also, the other thing you can do is just simply in your will, and actually in my will, it's as an addendum. I haven't gotten the pet trust stuff done yet because I just haven't, but I've got an addendum in my will. So the reason it's nice to be on an addendum is because then when things change, I just have to change the addendum. I don't have to have the whole will redone. But I've got a specified amount because I have insurance, but I think my kid kind of wants some of it too. So I got to, make provisions for her. But I've listed in there how much goes with each of my birds, so And when my daughter saw that, she says, "Was there going to be anything left for me?" And I said, "Too bad you don't like the birds." But
It worked out for
anyway,
you, but
so yeah, a lot of it goes to the birds, and I figured her dad can take care of the insurance for, so she gets more.
so what about, which brings up the point when you talked about what goes with each bird. What's the cost look like? I know you have a slide about the financial, like, Nick, can we put that slide up, the one about what the average cost is?
So, I tell people to take the age of the bird into consideration, food, toys, supplies, annual veterinary care, plan for emergencies. So depending on the size of the bird or the kind of bird that you have, you can figure it anywhere from $600 to $2,000 a year. And per bird. So if you've got multiple birds and you kind of multiply that out, and what is the average age expectancy? Well, I know it's really is a guess because now they're considered geriatrics at 22 years of age, and I think that's pretty young myself, but that's just me. But you figure if my oldest one, Carlos, is 33, and I figure he's got probably another 15 to 20 years. So I would multiply his, average cost per year out by 10 or 15 years. And then that's how much money I would want to go with him. And do that for each of your birds. So it's not inexpensive. And I know that there are some organizations that ask for, like you said, an endowment. And that can feel off-putting to people. What do you mean I have to pay to have, but it's not free for them to care for the bird, when the bird comes to them. And I think that, again, it kind of goes back to, it is a business. They have expenses that need to be covered. And so it's not that they're trying to get rich. I can assure you they are not getting rich. And, but they need to have their costs covered so that they can stay around to care. So.
Yeah. And I think, we've been talking, kind of directing this at companion parrot owners. But it also applies on the flip side of that, because I know we've got some folks from facilities who are listening tonight too. And I think that, Terry's a breeder, and she says, from her side, she's got a client that comes in, lives alone in the remote area, wants a baby. What do you do? And I think having a plan, Terry, as a breeder, or I know Carrie Ellen's at Bird Gardens in Naples. I think I saw Amanda Brown was on here too. And I think that you just everybody needs to have that in mind. They need to, so if you're a rescue, you're a facility, unfortunately, we're not all going to be around forever, and we need to have those plans in place, that plan of succession. If you're a breeder, you've got that plan. What's going to happen with your guys when something, unfortunately happens to you? Chuck says he's had a conversation with his mom. There's a lot, even if you're not the bird owner yourself, because I know there are some folks on here too who are not actual owners, having something prepared, not letting it get out of hand, and we talked about, again, ask for help. There's no sin in asking for help. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and saying, hey, things are rough, I need some help, because it's really about that welfare of the birds. And I think, I haven't run into a whole lot of people, and Patty, I don't know if you have, but I kind of doubt it. People who have birds or who are in this business who are really in it just for the money or just for themselves. Yeah, I know, right? Money? Karen, parrot business are so lucrative, right? I mean, I got my new mansion here in Maine because of the leather elves, and but it's about the welfare. I mean, do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and
And,
I don't.
and I think that I don't mean this to sound so harsh, but I think in some ways to not plan and put some thought into and preparation into take your birds being taken care of when you can't is kind of selfish. I mean, it just seems to me it's like that's part of the whole package of being a pet parent. Um, so, and there is a lot of opportunities for people to help you out and get you the resources that you need. So,
Yeah, and I think too, Janice is getting a oh, she's got Bentley the poodle, and Karen's going to buy her Bentley. Sometimes you guys, I don't know, but I think you know online there's a lot of judgment that happens. People are so quick to judge. This was absolutely wrong. This was horrific. This was this. This was that. Why didn't they? Why couldn't they? If we could refrain from those kind of statements and those that, I know. Okay, so wait, can you cue that like paradise music again, Nick? Because I am living in fantasy land where there isn't that condemnation and that judgment. If we could, put some of that aside, some of these horrors might not happen because people would be more willing to ask for help. I know it's a little bit of a Pollyanna kind of approach, but I really think as a community, we need to work with one another, whether we have all walks of aviculture right here tonight. We've got breeders, we've got rescues, we've got sanctuary, we've got a boarding facility, we've got veterinary people, and we've got companion parrot owners. And I think if we can all kind of pool our knowledge, pool our resources, and help one another out, that would be awesome. So, um, and Lori says network with family and friends. Absolutely. And Amanda, I know you agree. So, Patty, I hope this has been really helpful for people. I've enjoyed it. This is a topic that, like we said at the beginning, could have been very uncomfortable, but I appreciate that you've made it more comfortable for people. Um, any final words of advice for our pet parrot owners out there, or pet owners in general, actually?
yeah, pet owners in general is good. I mean, the dogs and cats, you don't have to quite plan for quite the length of time, but I think that what you said is absolutely perfect. That we need to stop judging each other and just support each other and find ways to help everybody be successful. I mean, ultimately, we all want our parrots to be able to be successful in our homes, but there comes a time when we aren't going to be able to care for them for one reason or another, and so it's just that we want to make sure that they get into a loving home or a loving situation that would be equal to where they're at now.
Well, thank you again. I really do appreciate you joining me, and we've got some resources up there. I know Nick put the forms up, and the live stream will be on the Leather Elves in videos shortly after we're done, so people can look at the slides that Patty shared with us. Thank you for that. I just have a couple of reminders. We've got the BOGO sale going on. Mark is going to hurt me because we have so much. So if you've already ordered, I promise you the orders are getting out. It's just you guys, there's been a wonderful response to this, and I want to thank you. We also have some really cool lamps and pillows that we found, and I just had to share them with you guys. So we put them on the site. We're almost sold out of the lamps. We've got some pillows left. And if you guys are if you're interested, you go to the site and it says they're sold out, let us know. Send me a message. Don't just go and sign out. Send me a message and we'll see if we can get some more. I don't know. I can't make any promises, but that's a possibility.
Lamps and pillows excluded from BOGO sale.
Thank you very much, Nick. See, Nick is my savior. Look at this. Yeah, they're not on the BOGO. So you can't get matching cockatoo lamps for your bedside on either side. You can get one, but your significant other has to be in the dark unless you get two. You buy two. So the next week's topic, I am going to be talking about training with distractions or how to herd birds. My guest is Meg Meyer of Natural Encounters. Meg is wonderfully energetic. So she's a trainer down at Natural Encounters in Orlando, and we're going to talk. She's involved with the macaw flight that you see if you go to that big theme park in Orlando that has macaws. And I'm not going to name them because I will get in trouble. But so Meg's going to be on next week, training with distractions. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you again, Patty. This has been great. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care.
Take care.
Night.